Hello and welcome to our weekly Bible study. We're continuing our study in 1 John. Today we're looking at 1 John chapter 4, verses 7 through 12. 1 John 4, verses 7 through 12. I'll go ahead and have you pause the video and read through 1 John 4, 7 through 12. All right, got it? Let's jump on in. Here John is stressing the importance of love. He has been teaching us that our practice should match our belief. Orthodoxy with orthopraxy, right doctrine with right practice. And so John is once again emphasizing the need for Christians to practice love. To John, according to verses 7 and 8, the identifying mark of a Christian is the love that they show. Love is the identifying mark of a Christian or of a believer. He says, everyone that loveth is born of God and knoweth God. Now, how can that be true? Don't plenty of people love? Well, John is confident that God's love is unique. And when we imitate that love through his grace and through the Spirit's work in our lives, it too, our love, is unique in this dark world. When we don't love like God does, then we are no different from the world. And to John, what does that say about us? In verse number 8, he explains that shows that we don't know God. So it's very important that we understand God's love and that we practice that same kind of love. So in verses 9 and 10, John shows us what is the quality of God's love. What is God's love like? In verses 9 and 10, he gives us an example that explains the quality of God's love. John says that God sent his Son as a demonstration of his love. Jesus was sent to be our propitiation. He took our place to satisfy God's wrath. Jesus took our place to pay our debt. In 1 John 3:16, John also says that God laid down his life for us. So the Father sent his Son, and the Son went on our behalf. This is God's love. How could we sum up this incredible love of God? Well, I think we could sum it up by understanding with John saying that God the Father sent and that the Son went. We could say that God's love is sacrificial action. God sees our needs and gives of himself to meet our needs. That is the love of God. Now, as John was saying in the opening part of our passage, it's very important that we show the love of God. If we're going to claim that we're God's children, then we should be imitating the love of God. John encourages us in verses 11 and 12 to imitate the love of God with God's help. Now, of course, we ought to practice this love toward God. We're to love him with all our strength, our soul, our heart, our mind, right? But John also wants us to focus on practicing this love with one another. So he says in verses 11 and 12, we ought also to love one another. Now, to drive home the importance of this, John says something that I think is very, very compelling. He says that no one has seen God at any time. Well, how then will people know God? If God cannot be seen, certainly we see evidence for God, but we don't see him physically in the flesh. How then could people know God? Well, John explains that if believers will practice the same kind of love that God shows, then people will see God. To John, a believer practicing the love of God is the missing component to God's love, right? The missing component to God's love is his physical presence, and God's love is completed or perfected when his love is demonstrated by his children. And so then that leaves us with this question. If that is the case, how will I practice love this week? It's so important. People need to know God. People need to be connected to God. And John says that love is perfected in us when we imitate and we show the love of God. Of course, we have God's help. God is on our side. The Holy Spirit is living in us and working that love out in our lives. But we also need to ask ourselves, as we look at the example of Jesus giving his life for us, how will I too give of myself to meet the needs of others? And so I'd love to spend time in discussion with you. We have some discussion questions in the comments. Leave a comment. I know I've seen this love demonstrated by believers, and it just it connects us to God. It shows us what God is like, and what an important ministry we have. As Paul says in Corinthians, that we are God's ambassadors, right? And so let's show the love of God. It's needed. It's unique. It sets us apart, and it is the identifying mark of a Christian, according to John. Well, God bless you, and we'll see you next time as we continue on in our Bible study here in 1 John.